What up, IDS Mob? It's your boy Harry Wilmington here, back with another show. And today we're answering a question from a guy that wants to know how to bring up the topic of STDs and getting checked before he gets physical with a woman. Now, this is very important because when you're out there in these dating streets, you do not know what these women are doing. Yes, that woman in front of you was pretty and she looks like she's the most trustworthy thing ever. But everybody has a past, and you don't know if that past includes potentially having an STD. So how do you go about bringing that up without hurting her feelings? Let's get into it. Question, he says, how may an introvert get a woman to get tested for STDs before getting physical? Best way to bring it up without offending them. So when I hear this kind of question from a guy, it lets me know one important thing. He is fearful of doing or saying anything that's going to upset a woman. And that is not a position you want to be in, okay? Because let's real talk it, okay? STDs are out there, and you don't know this woman from a woman you met last week, all right? And so you may want to bring up something, but you're internally thinking, if I say the wrong thing, or if I present it to her in the wrong light, she's going to be mad at me, and I don't want to ruin that. And I get it, guy, because let's be real. If you're on dating apps swiping back and forth, or you're going out into the real world doing cold approaches and trying to hit on women, it can be hard to build up enough of a conversation with a woman to get her to agree to go on a date, let alone 2 or 3 or 4 dates, let alone enough dates that lead up to her wanting to hook up with you. So you don't want to risk doing or saying anything that's going to make this woman potentially lose interest or feel offended or want to go away. But you can't have that stop you from doing what you need to do to protect yourself. So if you're a person that is cautious about not trying to catch anything, and you want to make sure the women that you're hooking up with also don't have something, then you got to bring it up. But here's the thing. The way men communicate with men and the way women communicate with women is different. And there's a reason that women use passive ways to try to get their point across to another woman. And that's because women can read into things 3 times better than men can, okay? This is why if a woman says to another woman, oh, I'm feeling fine, the other woman knows she's not fine, because they can read facial cues and internalize and recognize that this person is actually feeling a lot more than they're saying, okay? But this is also why women sometimes get offended when men come to them and say things directly, because we do it oftentimes without any emotion behind it. And going to them directly, again, they're feeling things 3 times more than we mean it. So if we come to them and say, you know, whatever, then they're going to feel that 3 times more. And if it's the wrong thing being said, they can take it offensively. So you don't want to be on a date and say, hey, so you need to get an STD check before we hook up. Because, yeah, in that presentation, that's going to be felt a lot of ways. But you can present that same idea in a passive way that lets her know that she needs to get tested before hooking up with you. Perfect example, all right? Let's say you guys met on a dating app and you guys are on a first date, right? So she starts saying, well, so have you seen other people, or how's the experience been for you or whatever? This is when you can put your request for her to get a test into a story or as a commentary based on the subject you're talking about. So in this case, she wants to know how it's been for you online dating. You could say something like, well, it's been going pretty good. I've only been out with a couple of people, but it's been nice so far. But I'm really just trying to get to know people because, I don't ever like to rush into things. I like to actually get to know the woman, spend time getting to know her likes and her dislikes. And also, for personal safety, I like to make sure that we're on the same page when it comes to getting checked. Because, after every relationship that I'm in, I always get checked, so I know my status, and I like to make sure the woman knows her status too before we start hooking up. So that takes a while to get to know in a person before you fully get to date them. But I'm having fun so far. So what did I just say? I said, I'm taking my time dating, which means I'm not trying to rush into anything. So I'm actually getting to know the girl in front of me. And part of that getting to know process is getting to know what her status is. And I've let her know through storytelling that I'm not the kind of guy that hooks up with somebody before I know everything on the table and before I let the woman in question know about my stuff as well, whether I have stuff or not, okay? And so when you say it like that, you've essentially told her you need to get an STD check before I ever consider hooking up with you. But at the same time, you've also said, I really like to get to know a person before I do that, so it's not just about sex for me. So you've basically put out 2 things that are very helpful to her to know, which is if you get to know her, it's basically for her and not for the hookup, but that if at the point you guys both get hot and heavy, that she needs to make sure her status is straight. Now, you haven't had to directly say that to her. You haven't had to direct her. You haven't had to, be so direct and say like, oh my God, you got to do this thing. But you said it in a way that's passive enough to where she will get it. And by telling it in that story, she recognizes just how important it is for you to actually know her status. All right. Now, under that guy's comment, a woman left a comment, and then he left another comment. So her comment said, I have a question for you. If you think there's a possibility that a woman could have an STD, is she really the kind of woman you would want to get physical with? Now, see, it's funny. This woman right here is being very judgmental about other women that could potentially have STDs, because the stigma is if you have an STD of any kind, you must have been hoeing around or you're a slut of some kind. And by the way, women judge women a lot harder than guys do. Yes, guys will make jokes here and there, but most guys will still hook up with a woman that, even one that has a reputation as being loose and easy, all right? But women, this woman right here is judging other women for having STDs. But here's the reality, guys, is that most people, men and women in this country, probably have some form of STD and don't even know about it, okay? For example, if you go to get like a regular panel STD, right? They test for like a plethora of STDs, but they do not check for herpes. And about 65 to 70% of the population has either version 1 or version 2 of herpes. And most people don't know that they have it. Why? Because the herpes test is not actually on the other panels, the main STD panel test that people get, which is usually free at like Planned Parenthood or whatever. No, you have to actually pay to get the herpes test. But most people don't know that. So most people are walking around probably with some form of herpes. It's like one of the easiest ones you can catch, okay? All that to say, this woman is being judgmental about other women potentially having other STDs, when the reality is most people don't know it. Most people are like, if I don't feel any kind of weird bumps or have any kind of weird discharge coming out of me, then I must not have anything. But people can carry STDs, and just like COVID, people have, C19, but might not show any kind of symptoms. They're asymptomatic. So you can be an asymptomatic carrier of an STD and be giving it to all kinds of people and have no idea that you're even doing it, all right? So I'm saying that to say that this woman's education on STDs and who potentially gets them and how they're spread is very, very low. But that's even more reason why when you go on these dates, it's perfectly fine to have that conversation and mention, it's funny, I used to not get STD checks, or I would get some here and there, but then I started to learn that most people that have it don't have any symptoms. And so that's not fair for me to pass on to somebody else that wouldn't know, because I don't know. Like, I got to make sure that my education is just as solid, because I don't want to pass this stuff around. And I think the women that I'm dating should be mindful that even though they could be, because you got to present it like, you're not assuming the person in front of you has done on purpose anything that would cause them to get STDs. But you could say, these women that I'm meeting, I think that they're all great women, and they could be like, the most pious person in the world. That doesn't mean that they don't potentially have something, even if they got something and they're not aware of it. They could have slept with like one person their whole life. Or they, somebody could have had something that was like an oral STD of some kind and then drank out of a glass and then shared it with that person. And now they got an STD and they still don't know about it. So this is good education for women to have when you're on these dates, because then they can start to think, man, am I even aware if I have something or not? Maybe I should go get checked. And especially definitely need to get checked if this guy is already saying through story again that he doesn't hook up with women unless he knows their status, and vice versa. All right. So this woman's way off the mark there. Anyway, continuing on, she says, if the answer is still yes, then you could suggest you both get tested. You could even get tested together. Make it clear that you're also doing it out of consideration for her. You could present it that way, but again, guys, you don't need to go on a date and say, hey, so have you ever had an STD check? We could do it together. But again, if you just bring up through story, hey, I like to make sure the girls I'm with are fully safe before we do anything. More often than not, she of her own accord will get the test. Getting a test together would be something you would more likely do if, say, you've been hooking up for a while and you guys are already in the throes of a relationship, or you're getting close to it. Then you would do that. But trying to ask a woman you just met on date 1, hey, so for date 2, let's go to get an STD check. Like, that's not going to really play that well, okay? She's a grown woman. Most STD tests are either free or relatively inexpensive, especially if you have insurance. And so let her figure that out on her own. But again, you got to keep to your word. At the point where she comes to you and wants to do some stuff, you got to remind her, okay, that's great. Hey, you know what? I think we should hook up. So let's set it for like next week. And you can say to her, hey, let's set it for next week because I want to get myself double checked just to make sure that I'm not going to spread anything onto you. All right. So you don't tell her, even in that moment, you don't tell her, hey, go get an S.T.D check. You say you're going to get one and that you'll show her the results the next time you guys meet up with each other. That lets her know she's got until the next time you guys meet up with each other to get the same thing done. And if she doesn't, then just say, you don't have to say, go get it now. Just be like, okay, well, you know what? Let's just wait. And then whenever you're ready, then we can proceed on. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, but what if that turns her off? Then forget her. You don't want to be with her anyway. If she's not recognizing that for you to feel safe in this, that you need to know her status, that's not a woman ultimately you want to deal with anyway, because she's all about herself and keeping her image up and not wanting to get into her ego about how she could possibly unclean or unsafe. And she might have a plethora of, baggage or feelings about herself and how she might possibly feel about herself should she end up getting an STD. That is none of your concern. Your job is to make sure that you are safe and you're protected, okay? So if she's going to fight you on it, get out now. You dodged the bullet. Anyway, she keeps saying, you want to make her feel totally comfortable as well. Not that you need proof she's, quote, clean before laying hands on her. You don't necessarily need the proof, but if it's important to you to see that proof, then yeah, get the proof before you get into the physical realm with her, all right? Continuing, she says, if you come to her with that kind of mature approach and she freaks out, then that's probably a red flag. This is coming from the perspective of a female who's only ever been in stable, monogamous relationships. I've had S.T.D tests, but only as part of routine OBGYN checkups. And that's good. And so, but again, you still need to make sure that you can have, like, if it's paper proof or something that she can show you that says, hey, my STD panel is clear, or I got this thing, but it'll go away in a little bit, or I have an STD, but I'm taking this for it. Like, you have the right to know that knowledge. She says each relationship we had spent some time just hanging out beforehand, so we both knew the other person had not been with anybody else for a good length of time prior to getting physical with each other. But again, STDs can remain dormant in your system and not activate for a while. So for her to be like, well, I didn't date anybody for like a year before I hooked up with somebody new, you could have got an STD from that previous person and then just carried around with yourself for a year while you weren't hooking up with somebody, okay? So again, that doesn't take out the fact that to be 100% sure, if that's what you need, make sure she's getting that test, make sure that she's showing you that paperwork that shows what she has or doesn't have, all right? And then this guy commented and he said, wow, thanks for your insight and perspective. I really appreciate it. Unfortunately, STDs is a real risk in today's age. CDC estimates 1 in 5 people in the US have an STD. It's no judgment on the person. It's just a real risk that I would like to be prepared, dating new people and potentially hooking up. So yeah, guy, absolutely right. Like I said, a good portion of the population doesn't know, A, that they have an STD, and B, if they do, which one they have. And since they don't know those things, they're definitely not taking anything for it if they do have something. So the women you're with on these dates, you may be educating them. You may be opening their eyes to, oh my gosh, I didn't know that just because I'm not showing symptoms doesn't mean that I couldn't get checked. Or she might have had symptoms that she thought were just like yeast infections or just little itchy bumps here and there and wasn't aware that those things could signal that she has an STD. But the important thing is keeping yourself safe. So to recap, if you're on these dates and you can bring up, how's your dating life been going, yada, yada, yada. Bring up a story. Say you're the guy that's patient. Say, hey, I like to get to really know a person. Because I'm telling you now, most women, when they're dating guys, by date 2, these guys are already trying to push them for sex. So she's used to guys trying to rush into stuff. So you coming along and saying you want to be a little bit patient, you're already going to be ahead of 97% of the other guys she's talked to, okay? But being able to say, I like to take my time and get to know a person, I like get to know their likes and their dislikes, kind of get to see how they operate, how they function, see if we get along, see if we have great chemistry, see if we have, we're going after the same goals and dreams. And then you can say, and also, I really like to make sure that we're both on the same page as far as, being safe and secure. after every relationship that I'm in, I tend to go ahead and get checked just because I want to make sure the next person I'm with is safe and secure if we do anything physical. And I like to make sure the women I'm dating have also done that same thing because, hey, I want to keep myself safe and I want to make sure that if we're going to get physical, we're going to be able to provide that kind of environment for each other. And you don't say it by saying, and that's why you need to get checked. You don't use the word you because we know the word you makes them feel offended, but you can just say, hey, and this is just what I do in my normal date. If you phrase it as though this is just a normal part of your dating process, which is being patient, learning about each other, and making sure that you guys are both safe for one another, then that'll come off in a positive way that's semi-passive, but she'll get the idea, oh my God, I gotta get checked. So hopefully, Guy, this answers your question. Now, for the rest of you, if you have any other questions you'd like me to answer on one of these shows, simply leave a comment underneath the video. If you're listening to the podcast, you can write me at HarryWilmington@gmail.com or go to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/HarryWilmington, and leave a comment down below. That's it. That's all I got. I'm Harry Wilmington, and I will catch you all on the next episode. I'm out. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Introvert Dating Success Podcast. Visit us at introvertdatingsuccess.com for more great tips on attracting women using your natural introvert